That's why I forgot about it.
Yeah, you already requested it. I forgot about that myself until I just read my review here. I'm not gonna go through item by item. I mean, if there's things you wanna talk about.
Because I didn't bring mine, I just knew we needed the waiver so we
Okay.
could proceed with the.
Yeah,
stormwater.
yeah, I mean,
I just seen it was listed on the agenda.
I don't think, planning commission is interested in going item by item. Huh? No. Oh,
We'll clean up.
We hear till 10 o'clock
I know.
tonight on a 2-page review letter. No, he got out of it. He's officially off federal grand jury duty and he will be here any minute.
And he's not a fugitive. So
No.
he's witness protection. He was officially released.
I'm not sure who knew that.
So I think he said it was 2 years.
Yeah,
18 months.
18 months.
That's tremendous burden to have that assignment.
the real estate store manager is on
It's
grand jury duty,
because all
federal
bad
grand jury
guys
duty down in
do the same
Philadelphia
thing
for
over
at least 18 months.
Nick?
Yeah. Stop soon. Not soon, Mickey Ballesteri.
But it's Nick now.
Hmm?
Nick.
Oh, Nick,
and
yeah, this, I'm
Easy,
talking
The
about
former.
the former, the one that just retired.
Gotcha.
Mickey. Yeah, no, Nick.
Thank
was
you.
serious.
Yeah, thank you. I got the
one-sided.
pre-application questionnaire for that like 6 months ago. And I was really hoping the response that I was a municipal employee would get me out of it, but apparently not.
No?
That's frustrating.
You must have to be famous to get one of those.
Food, and you're paying for your hotel, I mean, how bad could that be? At least you don't have to drive down. Even pay for your gas, and your parking. Parking ticket usually costs more than anything else. Pay that, you're good.
I think the essence of being retired is doing what you want to do. Never having gone to federal courthouse is not what you want to do. It's not a good thing.
It's probably what he wanted to do. Save them from themselves.
Hey, John.
There he is.
Sorry, I'm a minute late, 2 minutes maybe. I'm working on year-end stuff at my house, which year ended April 30th. I'm right on it. Okay, let's call the planning commission meeting to order. Is there any public comment? Hearing none, we'll move on. 19 State Hill Road, we talked about this earlier, but I'm gonna take it away.
Earl Felty is here on behalf of the applicant to discuss the overall plan, and just to make the planning commission aware, a zoning hearing was held last Tuesday, at which the zoning hearing board did grant a variance for the front yard setback along Hobart Avenue, which was one of the sticking points of this project moving forward.
So, Mr. Old, owner of RH Renier, is here. This is a building, a rendering of what he plans on putting on the corner out there. After we remove the other two buildings, the single-story office showroom and the 2.5-story dwelling that's out there now. So, I don't know if anybody has any questions on the project. We'll be removing the single story, which is closer to RH Renier. That's where his office and showroom is. That'll be removed. And there's a 2.5-story up off State Hill Road, and that will be removed and will be replaced by 2,080 square foot, 2-story office building. Showroom on the bottom, offices on the top, and a little bit of basement storage behind the showroom.
Was the setback the only issue at the zoning hearing?
There were two other things discussed in regards to loading dock and clear site triangle that the board felt variances were not required. There were conditions placed on the variance being granted, one of them being that all deliveries will be made to the existing facility at 1140 Hobart Avenue. And for the clear site triangle, it really came down to there not being a definition of a collector street in either the zoning ordinance or the subdivision and land development ordinance. So erring in favor of the applicant.
So today, we're here really to try and receive some waivers. And one of them, of course, is gonna end up being that clear site triangle again, because that's also in the Salvo.
Do you just wanna go through them one by one as listed on the agenda?
Yes. Do you have them the same way I have them?
I believe so, yes.
4013, yeah. So the first one is the scale of the plan. Salvo requires a 50 scale, and I did a 20 scale, and this is a 20 scale, so you can kind of see how small this is. So we're asking for a waiver to do a 20 scale, because if we did a 50 scale, it'd be 2.5 times smaller. You wouldn't be able to see anything, it'd look like a postage stamp. So we're asking for a waiver of that one, so do you want to do one at a time, or
Let's
just
do
keep
one at a
going?
time.
Make the motion.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
So the second one then would be the clear sight triangle. And Michelle has it up there. The end of the hatched part would be a 150-foot clear sight triangle. And the inside of that, what I would call the left side of that, is what we're proposing, which would be an 80-foot clear sight triangle. So remember that Hobart Street's a one-way coming out, and you're not allowed to turn left, you have to turn right. So the Salvo has a 150-foot clear sight triangle, but it's basically set up for if you're crossing traffic. So, and there's also, I don't know if you can see it there, but I have it highlighted here in pink. They're allowed to park along this side all the way up to here, which is almost where our clear site proposal is. So, that's just a little more evidence of how somebody thinks, you have enough room there. 80 feet, you can stack 4 cars, and you can see 4 cars. So we're asking for that one. If not granted that one, it pretty much goes through kind of almost the middle of the lot. And with the setbacks, you could put a small building in here, but still parking would be an issue. So, can't say it almost makes it undevelopable, but it gets close to it. And it for sure wouldn't allow us to do, almost our whole building is almost within that 150-foot clear sight triangle.
What is that 100-foot based on? The type of street that is?
I can't speak to the subdivision and land development ordinance, correct?
This is a common requirement in Berks County. They normally, most other counties, they require you to use PennDOT site distances.
Right.
Okay? These are somewhat arbitrary. I think it has more to do with people tending to run stop signs and needing to see 150 feet to know that they can do it.
Typically, I would think, I've seen 75 feet as a typical.
75 is very common.
Yeah.
The only
100 seems a
reason,
bit
the Hill Road is this distance along Hill Road is 150 is because of the volume of traffic there. But our office has no objection to.
Yeah, I just was wondering where, I'd never seen one that large before, that I recall.
Did you do a site distance calculation based on PennDOT standards?
No, you mean like a stopping distance kind
Yeah,
of
the
thing
stopping
based on the
distance.
slope of the road? No, I did not.
Okay.
That's more important, I think, than.
That would be a good condition to.
Yeah, I don't have a problem granting the waiver, but I'm concerned about, since all the traffic, you gotta turn right, you have to see that, you gotta see
Correct.
left to make sure, and then you got a variance for the building, so.
Yep, and I think that would be a proper, condition for the waiver to include.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that.
Can you restate that for the sake of Melissa and Kim writing the minutes, so they're clear on what you want it conditioned on, please, thank you?
The site distance,
Safe site, stopping distance, something
That-
like
yeah,
that.
that's it.
Yeah.
especially to the left.
Yeah,
Or
it would actually only
to the
be
north.
one, yeah, it'd only be one way, the cars coming down State Hill Road to the inner house before they need based on the speed limit.
Correct. I make a motion for that waiver with that condition.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, so then the third one is a request for a traffic impact study. So,
Stand there for the day and figure it out, it's always packed with traffic.
well, yeah, so we're removing the one-story showroom office, and we're removing a 2.5-story single-family dwelling at offset versus the size of the new building.
Did you get any, do you have any idea, just ballpark cost estimate on what it would cost? I mean, typically what we do if we grant the waiver, we request a fee in lieu of equal to what a traffic study would cost.
Greg might know better, I don't deal with.
I won't,
studies
you know,
much.
I would suggest that, you know, you get an estimate to do it, and then we can base the fee on that.
So fee in lieu of the study.
Yeah, that's generally the way, we handle that waiver request, is take a fee in lieu of.
Okay.
Can I just ask a question? A traffic study would do what? If we did a traffic study?
If he did the traffic study?
Exactly what would it tell us?
Well, he's dealing with 2 existing borough streets, so, if there are issues pertaining to traffic there, he's not going to be adding much traffic to this, to the volume of either street. So, any conditions that would need to be rectified would probably be existing. So,
What I'm asking is, hypothetically, if you're gonna do a traffic study, and you as a professional, tell me what you might uncover in a traffic study, or is it just the obvious? There's always traffic on Hill Road.
yeah, you know, I don't know, because I'm not a traffic engineer. I don't do traffic studies. Our firm doesn't do them either. We usually use traffic planning and design.
We're looking at Eric, but my guess is any queuing or stacking issues.
Then, if I were to do a study for the site, it would show that there's an issue at State Hill 422, but there's de minimis change related to the use that they're proposing. What that, you know, we know what the study is gonna show, which is why we go the fee in lieu of, so we can utilize that to do broader studies and
What do you got bigger problems?
more potential,
Yeah.
you know, improvements.
We actually use that a lot of times towards our match for the Green Light Go program, so retiming traffic signals, things like that.
Yeah. Okay,
So is there any estimate on the cost of the traffic study?
I don't have any idea, I don't do too many large jobs.
Does
I've
it
never,
cost more
I've
than
never
building
done
a
one.
building?
I hope not that much, but I think they are pretty expensive, aren't they, to do a traffic study?
I don't know.
We're gonna talk on the Highlands, but for their project, you were looking at what, 25,000?
Yeah, 2025.
So I would think for something of this scope, it would be a little less.
Yeah, they can vary depending on what your scope of your study is, depending on what intersections need to be studied, how far out it needs to go, the amount of trips. Probably have more peak hour trips if it's a business in the morning and in the evening times type of thing.
Take somewhere south of that 25 number for the site.
Your estimate? What do you think it costs?
I don't, somewhere between 10 and 20, I'll say.
Really? Sounds like a lot of money to state the obvious.
That's
Give them a
requirement in
discount?
the ordinance.
Give them a discount, is that permissible?
Again, I mean, typically we base the fee off of if they can get us a valid estimate showing what a cost would be to perform it, we'll accept a fee in lieu of that.
So you guys gotta get a low estimate and keep your price down.
I don't know if there's any Amish guys that do traffic.
Is an oxymoron?
Still go up.
Yes.
Given that, do you want to table any action on that waiver request until a cost
Well,
estimate?
where do you think we're headed with the plan today?
We're not in a position to grant conditional plan approval.
And this really doesn't affect his design of the plan itself.
So if you wanna have further discussion on this topic, then we should just roll it over to the next meeting.
Okay,
We need a motion for that?
yes.
Make a motion that we table that portion of the waiver request.
Second. Thank you. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
So the last one, I think Craig's gonna have something to say about, so I don't know if you wanna say it first.
But just before we do that, we're rolling this issue, but you wanna get some number together for next meeting. I mean, you know, come prepared to talk about what your estimate has shown, so that the planning commission can react to that.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
So do you want me to read number 4, Craig, or do you just wanna say something?
So Chris, if you could take this to council all at once we get this study price in, or?
I think typically we take the waivers from this meeting just so that they can put on the plan information that, you know, waiver of such and such a section was requested and granted by council at such and such council meeting. It helps keep the thing moving along if council disposes of the waivers that are recommended by the planning commission, even though the plan isn't ready for approval yet.
Okay.
Do they generally, I guess generally they'll approve the waivers that you guys recommend?
Generally, yes.
And the only one I'm worried about is the site distance, because we don't wanna put any more water in, time and money into a stormwater engineer if this isn't gonna get approved, because obviously the whole design will change.
Why,
This
typically,
clear site triangle.
council approves the recommendations, especially on waivers.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So, somewhere along the line of talking with people, I was told if we could do a small project, stormwater design for this, we're only adding 970 additional impervious square feet. So that's less than 1,000. Now, since then, I was told different from that. So that's why I thought maybe Craig might not have something to say about that. That we had to come to planning to get permission to do a small project stormwater design, which originally I wasn't told, but that resulted.
Well, originally we did, when you first submitted this, we didn't even have, that wasn't even an option.
Correct.
Okay.
I thought that was only available for residential projects.
Yes, it is.
So this is not a
No.
residential project, so it
Plus,
doesn't,
it's only available for projects that don't require land development.
right, and this clearly does require land development.
Right.
So on both scores, this doesn't fall within that new regulation.
Right. So I already had it listed, so I've already been told that, so we were kind of expecting that.
How does removing the buildings that you're going to remove impact this issue?
970 square feet of additional impervious.
Oh, so you're removing the building, it doesn't add value, it adds problem.
No, so we, say that again, we're removing the
The
buildings
total impervious is
Yeah.
increased, so
Yeah,
even though they're
yes.
removing,
Oh, it is.
they're adding more than
970.
they're taking away.
You're
Should we do
adding
the
some-
parking lot, 13 cars, and a new building, it's 970 additional.
Okay.
Relative to the existing.
Yeah. Okay, so that's all we had. These guys don't have any other questions?
So are you withdrawing your request for exemption from the stormwater ordinance then? Just so we can
Yes.
dispose of that?
Yes. Oh, there was another one, wasn't there?
Well, yeah,
Oh,
this is what we need to amend the, agenda for, which is the preliminary, you submitted a preliminary final, and ordinance requires a preliminary and final submission, so you're gonna need a waiver of section 303.1, which you did request, by the way, but it wasn't on the agenda, so it needs to be added to the agenda so it can be acted upon.
Okay, so we need a motion to amend the agenda to add the one-step review process topic to the agenda.
Make that motion. Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Ask for public comment?
Any public comment? Sorry.
No, that's now, after it's on the agenda, ask for public comment.
Okay, it's on the agenda. Is there any public comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
That's it for us.
Well, now you
You
can,
need a motion.
now we can discuss your request now that it's on the agenda.
Oh, that was just to get it
That was getting it on the agenda.
Okay.
So do you have a recommendation, Craig?
Yeah, this is commonly, we highly recommend that you allow this to go preliminary, final, one-step process, yeah.
See, since November or September 1st, we had new rules on how things work around here, so sometimes I'm not quite up with them. But
So now we need a motion, on that, right?
Motion on that waiver.
So made.
I'll second.
the motion is second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Motion carries.
Based off a conversation I had with Earl before the meeting started, based off these waivers, some other revisions he's going to make based off the zoning hearing last week, there's no need for the planning commission to take any type of formal action to approve the plans today, other than to table agenda item 3F, which is a motion is required to deny, table, or approve conditional plan approval. And then the next requirement is to accept an additional 90-day time extension the developer is granting the borough because of when the timing of the previous 90-day time extension expiring and the January planning commission and council meetings.
So you have that in writing, the
Yes.
extension? Okay. So we ought to have two motions.
Yes.
First motion would be to table topic 3F.
I'll make a motion to table.
Second.
Okay. All in favor of tabling the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
And then the next is a motion to accept the 90-day time extension from the developer for conditional plan approval of the project.
Move to accept the 90-day time extension.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's gonna look great, just for my personal opinion.
Thank you. I hope so.
One
Yeah, that works.
Do you want a laser pointer?
Sure, got one.
This is.
Thank you.
There's some pretty cool stuff in the drawers over there.
Good.
Yep.
Thank you very much for having me. My name is Bill Fredericks. I'm with RGS Associates. Kurt Evans with Highlands is back there as well. We're here just to kind of give a status update of where we stood with the barn. I believe we were here in September. Holidays screw my calendar, but we're here in September. The plan you see before you is pretty close to what we came in with for the building the 41 apartment building, there's a 15 apartment unit. Parking, there's underground parking in both buildings. For context of the Highlands, if you come off of Cambridge, way up here, into their main campus, make a left on Bray Circle, and then Gale Song Drive is right here. We're kind of realigning that intersection a little bit, and then these two apartment units are right there. Really the refinement from a layout standpoint from the plan, as we talked about last time, was this walk right here. As we talked through, I think there was a desire to have a connection if you came out of building 2 to have a little bit more direct access to Bray Circle. It loops, and we talked about this intersection and not having pedestrian access and grades and stormwater. We did loop it along the parking lot so that if somebody parked right here, they had a chance to get on the sidewalk and make it directly to the main entrance. So it kind of served two purposes as we did that. I did meet with the fire chief on site. The hydrants as shown on the plan that we submitted is what we talked through. He didn't really have any other concerns about the site. He does list everything from like a building permit aspect, which is great because we have an architect involved in this point, so those things can start to be considered. We are in receipt of McCarthy's letter dated October 28th. Just very quickly through that, we did talk through the waivers last time. If anybody wants to talk through the waivers again, or if there's any highlights, I guess the one highlight would be the traffic impact study. Michelle and I did very briefly talk about this previously, so I will get a proposal together. We typically use traffic planning and design. I guess my understanding is that's Steve Burrows' engineer, so I will have to get a proposal from someone. So again, if we want to talk through any of the waivers, I can absolutely do that. I don't think they're on the agenda for motion today. And I don't think there were any concerns from the last meeting either. But again, if we need to talk through them, absolutely. In this subdivision and land development review section, I will come back to number 9, which is sanitary sewers. An update on number 12, which is MPDS approval. So there's a few steps to an MPDS approval. There's admin complete, there's a pre-application meeting first, admin complete. We're at the admin complete stage. We got admin complete like July 28th. Because this is an individual permit, it goes to DEP. It has been at DEP since July 28th. I asked for a status update, I got we're in the queue. In 4 months, I fully anticipate we will be getting something soon. If anybody works with DEP, this has been their norm, unfortunately, for a few months, if not years now. But it is under review. I don't anticipate too much. I mean, the borough has reviewed it from a stormwater perspective, so I don't anticipate too much from DEP. The one technical item, there was some pipe runs noted at less than 0.5% in stormwater. It's partially a calculation issue. We're resolving it. It's not a big company at all. And the opinion of probable cost just needs updated with our latest set. Those are really the two technical items in the letter. Again, not hard to overcome. The biggest item is the sanitary sewer. So in the latest comment letter, it was noted that Spring Township has imposed a moratorium on new sewer flows directed to the West Lawn interceptors. So to give a little context, Highlands flows into a line which goes in Cambridge and then keeps going straight across the street. Goes down near the school area. That school has actually a couple lines. One is Spring Township's line, which is what the Highlands dumps into. That's called the West Lawn interceptor. I believe there's also the Wild Missing interceptor down there as well. We had a meeting with Spring Township last week to discuss through some of the items. I'll take a step back. We had an initial meeting with, I think, the borough and Spring Township's engineer to talk through the sewer items. The attorneys have been talking with each other. We had a meeting with Spring Township last week. There's not one, they noted they didn't believe there was a moratorium on the line, at least not as imposed by DEP. Not saying there's not an issue. So part of the reason for the conversation is during heavy rain events, the manholes can surcharge. And what typically when it's a heavy rain event, it means it's I&I, infiltration and inflow into the sanitary system. You get cracks in pipes or the joints aren't quite right, especially in older systems where you get settlement. Cracks in the manholes, you'll get stormwater flow in there. The West Lawn interceptor next to the school is at a low point next to a creek, so it makes sense to get the high water table. There are things that can be done with infiltration and inflow. You can line manholes, you can slip line pipes, you can do some different things, you can put different manhole lids on to prevent it. Regardless, we left the Spring Township meeting that we need to get them additional information on the existing flows that have been done by the Highlands to this point. They're checking their existing records for what's been done in our proposed flows. Nothing has been, nothing has been defined yet of what the approach is, but it has been discussed. At a minimum, like, if it boils down to it, the pipe just needs to be upgraded in size. So that's where we stand with sanitary sewer at this point. It's continuing ongoing. We are adding 60 EDUs. So our proposed project, if you remember the barn project, that was 4 units. This is 56. We are doing planning for all of it at this stage, just to make sure it's all encompassed and on record for everything moving forward. So it's 60 EDUs. In the grand scheme of things, for flow to a pipe, it's not, it's a number. Don't get me wrong. That's why we're discussing it, but it's not this extravagant, big development.
What pipe are you talking about would have to be upgraded?
It's a west line interceptor. I believe there's 2 sections within. They started to identify 2 sections along the stream point between like 2 manholes. So the line Highlands flows into, I think it's Cambridge, and then goes through that residential development there. That's all borough lines. The borough then dumps into the Spring Township West Line interceptor line, which Spring Township owns. Then that dumps into the Shillington interceptor, which then goes to the JMA sewer treatment plant. So there's a couple authorities we can go through. So the good news is there's capacity at the plant. I have that approval letter from JMA. There's capacity at the plant. It's really just the line. My understanding from the borough, there's no issues with the borough lines, and there's no issue with the Shillington lines. My understanding, it is just the Spring Township line, and it's. Last I checked, it was like 400 feet of line. It might be a little bit more if you go manhole. That's all to be resolved. But yeah, it's a run. It's not a mile of pipe that's an issue. It's like 400 feet.
Okay.
Does this entail relining or digging up?
So to be determined. If it's an upgrade in size of pipe because they want the extra capacity, it's digging up, and I think right now it's at 12, and it would be at least. I think the next line is up is 18 at least.
And where is this extension?
So it's called the West Line Interceptor. I believe it is
It's not in West
adjacent to
Lawn,
the
because
school.
that's 2 miles away.
Correct. I think it's called the West Line because it's coming from Spring Township. I believe it's right next to the high school,
Close to.
close to the school. It's along the creek.
So as part of this project, but separately, there's sections of this pipe that go through the borough parklands that they're going to dig up and replace as well. We're still waiting for final information from Spring Township on where in the parklands and elsewhere in the borough that is going to occur. But same reasoning, it's to upsize the pipe.
And my understanding from that conversation on Friday, the pipe that Highlands flows to is not in their current upgrading
Gotcha.
system.
Now, when you say Borough Parkland, where, it's Borough Parkland, which is not the Highlands development,
Correct, but it's within the easement of the authorities.
and where is that?
So I can answer that question better than him, because again, this is separate outside of their project. Roughly behind, the Meadows Apartments, it's gonna cut through kind of parallel to the Wyomissing Creek, and then a portion is gonna come out, I believe, on Reading Boulevard in the vicinity of Bullish Circle, in that area. We haven't actually received final plans or final anything from Spring Township. Just when we had this initial sewer meeting with Spring, Wyomissing, McCarthy, and the Highlands to talk about this issue, Spring threw it out there, oh, by the way. So my understanding is they haven't even done survey yet. Yeah, so very preliminary, they were just giving us a heads up, sometime next year, we're doing this.
And is that project connected to this project, or is it 2 projects, dig it up?
So I guess that's, I don't wanna lose my negotiating sleeve, right? My understanding is an existing issue, it's a known issue, it has surcharged previously. Now, the Highlands is adding 60 EDUs to that same line, but it has been a known issue
Yeah.
prior to these 60 EDUs being added to the line.
But it looks like they are in the process of looking at it,
Yes.
evaluating it, and coming up with a solution.
Yes.
Correct. And regardless, with the 60 EDUs, I mean, this is another negotiating tech, right? There's an EDU fee, whether that fee is used to upgrade this line or whether it goes to the U fee, that's to be determined. But there is, my understanding, something needs to occur because of the overflow.
So are we trying to get this whole project completed in one, the big dig, or there'll be this project?
Well, this is a Spring Township.
Yeah, it's not our project.
It's a Spring Township project, and do they have a schedule for this?
They, like I said, they haven't even done survey yet, so.
The reason this affects us so much is because they need to get a planning module approved through Spring Township, okay? We can't approve it without the downstream owners approving it as well, okay? So this is why it affects them. You may not even be tying directly into the portion of that line that needs to be repaired, are you? I mean, I don't.
Directly, no, we're upstream of it. So
You're
we do
upstream
flow-
of it.
Yes.
So, so in reality, I called it a moratorium, and I guess that was really incorrect, because it's certainly not a DEP moratorium,
Correct.
but it was our understanding that Spring Township wasn't allowing any more connections into that line. If they can go to Spring Township and get a planning module approved, that's,
So it didn't sound that way from the meeting.
what's that?
It did sound like that at last week's meeting, that they would give us a planning module. So when you do a planning module, you have to do two capacity issues. One is treatment capacity, which, as I mentioned, the treatment plant has capacity, so that's good. Then there's a conveyance capacity, so it's the sewage actually getting to the plant. So what Craig is correct, we're gonna hit an issue with the conveyance capacity, because Spring will say, well, that you'll have a hydraulic overload within 5 years based on the known issues they've seen. So technically, we can't get them to sign off on that section of the planning module. Without a remediation plan in place. So the line doesn't have to be fixed in order for that planning module to go through. They just have to have a plan in place with an implementation schedule to fix the line.
And since it's not in the borough and it's not under the borough's control, really all they need to do is get that sign off, whatever they need to do to get that.
So we can just say good luck and finish.
Well,
it.
no, he needs to do that.
No, I mean, but it's not gonna cost us anything.
Oh, no,
We
it
just
has,
have to approve what we
No.
have to approve,
no,
and then he has to get his.
So the only thing I'll say from a borough perspective is like the Highlands is not the only thing that flows into the line. There's other borough lines that flow into this West Lawn interceptor. And my understanding is the West Lawn interceptor is owned by Spring Township. But typically there's an intermunicipal agreement for the borough to dump into the line. I don't know what that agreement says, and I don't know, you're talking about cost, I don't know from a borough perspective if they would go to that intermunicipal agreement to do something. Like,
And-
I'm just throwing it out there that typically there's an intermunicipal agreement between
yes.
those things.
To answer your question, the Highlands project in and of itself is not gonna cost the borough money. But as he indicated, possibly the project might come back to the borough in some fashion, but they haven't asked for anything.
They haven't asked, I don't even think they have a cost estimate. Again, they haven't done
I don't
survey.
think they have a
They've-
design yet,
yeah.
or, what their intent is.
So basically what this is a bottleneck, that anything that's planning proposed development in Wyandot Borough that flows into that can't get approved, is what the problem is.
And I'm guessing just based on the borough, you probably get a lot of one lot, not subdivision because it's built up, but you get one lot EDU requests. Here comes the Highlands, which is probably one of the few projects that can flow into this sewer interceptor that has more than a couple EDUs, which is why the flag's being raised now. So Highlands, it's not necessarily a Highlands issue, it's a global issue, but because Highlands wants the 60 EDUs, that's why it's being raised at this point.
So the only way to look at the future of this, it might cost us some money, and it's the project that they're doing now, which might end up costing money later when those guys figure out what they're gonna do, is to put something in that agreement that says if there is a cost, that it won't be ours, because it's going to this project.
So again, I'll go back to it's been an existing condition, and that was how they started the meeting off, it is already hydraulically overflowed.
On a practical level, they've gotta make their own deal with Spring Township.
Right.
And if Spring Township comes to the borough and asks for something, we'll deal with that when it happens.
Right, they won't include these guys, because there's nothing in this agreement that says we can come back to you because of Spring Township made us do it, or to do what we'd like to do for you.
Yeah, I would say it's two separate things.
Okay.
So
what kind of action do we need to take today?
You do need to accept an additional 90-day time extension request because we're gonna have the same timing issue of the current time extension expiring prior to the January council meeting.
And if there's any questions on the plans, I mean, obviously we're here, appreciate your time. If you guys have any questions, or
I'll move on the extension.
Second. Do you have any further discussion on that? That's just to amend the agenda, right?
No,
Yeah,
this
it's
is
on
on
the
the
agenda.
agenda. The term extension is on the agenda.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you, motion carries.
I just have one question, what is your client's intention with regard to the plan while this sewer issue is outstanding? Are you gonna try to get the plan ready for some kind of conditional approval, or are you gonna be waiting?
So we have the the technical comments internally addressed. I mean, again, most of them's administrative. I guess we'll make a plan submission to address those minor technical items, and we can tee it up to be as clean as we can get it. We can certainly come back to another meeting if we want to address the waivers at one shot. Again, I need to get the
Yeah.
traffic impact study
I guess-
cost to you.
If your client's intention is to clean up a plan, I would suggest moving forward so that we can get it off our agenda, even though the sewer issue is still pending.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Yeah,
Thank
good
you.
luck.
Good luck.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks. Thank you.
All right, several months ago, the planning commission recommended approval to council of some amendments to the zoning ordinance regarding wireless communications facilities. The genesis of that version of amendments to the zoning ordinance was to put into place some aesthetic regulations that would help the borough better manage small wireless facilities, both inside and outside the public right-of-way, because we are anticipating with the rollout of the 5G service that there will be more requests for installation of small wireless communications facilities, and we wanted to try to make them blend into the architecture of our community. What has since occurred is that the legislature enacted something called Act 50, actually the same day they amended the Sunshine Law, the last day of June 2021, and those new regulations created by the legislature regarding small wireless facilities within the public right-of-way were the result of lobbying by the wireless communications industry to better protect their right to put whatever they wanted to within the public right-of-way, again, as part of this 5G rollout. So we have reviewed the requirements of Act 50, and it is our recommendation as the solicitor to the borough that there be some further adjustments to the zoning regulations on small wireless that will take into account how Act 50 is structured. And what that means specifically is that there is something now, our existing regulations were basically tower-based facilities which had to be outside of the right-of-way, and non-tower facilities, we had some rules for inside the right-of-way and some rules for outside the right-of-way. So basically we had three general categories that were subject to different levels of regulation. Tower-based facilities, non-tower inside the right-of-way, and non-tower outside the right-of-way. And when I say non-tower, that basically is co-location. Now, co-location could be on the roof of a building, on the facade of a building, on a light pole, on a telephone pole. Any of those things would be a non-tower wireless installation. So with Act 50, there is now a category of small wireless facilities, meaning antennas, transmitters, and receivers within the public right-of-way that are subject to special privileges under Act 50. So the structure that we are now proposing for the wireless regulations would be to keep the tower-based regulations the same as they are in the existing YMSA zoning ordinance. But instead of having non-tower inside the right-of-way and non-tower outside the right-of-way, we would have small wireless facilities which would include anything within the right-of-way and non-tower wireless for the small facilities or co-location facilities outside of the public right-of-way. And so that way we will be mirroring what the legislature wants us to do for the small wireless facilities within the public right-of-way. And there are special limits on fees and permitting and timing for reviewing permits that are all part of Act 50 that apply to these small wireless facilities within the public right-of-way. So what you have in front of you is a proposed amendment to the zoning ordinance that will comply with Act 50 as I have just described. The aesthetic regulations that we did 6 months ago, those are still all going to apply. But it is more of, you know, how the ordinance is structured and the use of definitions of, and the special, you know, permitting requirements and fee limitations that are at issue here, not really the aesthetic stuff. Any questions about any of that?
So the email I got this morning from Troy at 11 o'clock.
Oh,
did you
Thank you
address
for bringing
that?
it up. I forgot to mention it. Our fire marshal said he would like us to add some regulations for facilities that include on-site generators where they are storing fuel. He wants some, you know, some regulations to be cross-referenced in our zoning regulations so that so folks who install facilities that have on-site generators with fuel storage will be reminded that they have to get a permit and inspections from the fire commissioner. So I think that's a good idea. It's a safety measure. It has nothing to do with Act 50, but it would be an additional regulation on any wireless facilities that have on-site generators and fuel storage, which in my opinion is only going to be the cell-based antennas, you know, which again have nothing to do with Act 50. But it's a good idea. You know, Troy is always looking out to make sure that we have good safety regulations in place. And what he suggested in his email this morning, I think, is a good idea. And I responded to Troy's email and said, yeah, we'll add something to the draft ordinance to address your concerns.
So you didn't react to that between 11 o'clock and 3:30?
I did.
You did?
did, yes.
Not in the terms of editing what you're looking at.
No, I did not send it. I responded by saying, I'll take care of it, Troy. I didn't respond by revising the ordinance.
So we're gonna table this or what?
Well, my recommendation would be to move it along on the condition that I address Troy's comments by revising it before it gets to council. But it's up to you. I mean, if you all want to study this some more, be my guest. But from my point of view, I'd like to keep it moving. But it's up to you.
So would I.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Are all the wireless communication facilities a subset of the big guys that started these wireless communications
Well,
facilities? Or
I mean, if you're asking me how the industry has evolved, you know, there's a lot of things that have happened. In some cases, tower companies have now become the suppliers of the antenna services. You know, originally, when I started looking at wireless stuff, the communications companies were putting up their own towers and handling their own antennas. Now the tower companies are owning the antennas and are selling services. So that part has evolved. With regard to these new small facilities, I think it's going to be the same thing. I think there are going to be service providers. People are, you know, going to install them. I'm not aware that it's the same companies that own the big antennas, but it could be. I don't know that.
From what I've seen so far in applications we've received for the existing ones, like there's a company called Mobility that they're the service provider for, say, all of Verizon or all of AT&T. So I think it is similar to what you've seen with the towers. There's a service provider that contracts with the mobile company, whoever that is, to do the install. I mean, when I was talking to Mobility 2 years ago about their deployment, they were doing a stretch of Penn Avenue, well, Penn Street actually, from the city of Reading all the way out to Robinsonia.
So on that subject though, if you're looking into the future, is it like an explosion of population of WCFs that we need to track for purposes of what Troy is asking about? Because to tell them they have to do this to these little things, I don't know how big they are, but somebody has to go around and inspect these things to make sure all this is done.
We already actually do that. So these little ones do not have generators, at least not fuel power generators. So Troy will not need to go out and inspect them. But any small wireless communication facility that's in the right of way, Jim Babb and I go out and inspect annually just to make sure it's not posing a threat to the safety of anybody walking around it or near
Yeah,
it.
if it's in the public right away, we wanna make sure it's not gonna fall down on anybody's head or.
So we actually have a map of all
So,
those.
yeah.
I actually have a report set up in Permit Manager that, and it's conditioned on the approved permit that, you know, every year that inspection is required. There's a reminder on my calendar as to when to do them.
Sort of like an elevator.
Kind of, yeah.
Do we not have anything in the ordinance that speaks to generator and fuel storage
It's in our fee schedule, so it's,
outside of the communication
Well,
facilities?
it's in the
general?
fire,
it's in the fire code.
It's in the
Right.
fire code, so what Troy is trying to do, I think, I mean, because those fire code regulations are already in place and they're already subject to them.
Right.
So what I'm anticipating is not having a zoning regulation on fuel storage and generators, but instead just adding a cross-reference as kind
Okay.
of a reminder. Because, you know, we don't wanna duplicate the regulation, but we wanna make it more likely to be complied with, and the way to do that is to cross-reference that fire code regulation.
Okay.
So here's where in our fee schedule, these are all the operational and construction permit fees broken down by class with the fee. So, I mean, that is coming specifically out of the IFC,
Okay.
which has now been updated to the 2018 edition. This is last year's fee schedule.
Okay, your fire extinguisher approved in your apartment building.
It sounded like you wanted a list,
Like everybody does
or,
that.
but the list already exists.
I mean, when he's talking, to go back to, he's talking about tower base, so we only have, I think off the top of my head, 5 actual cell towers in the borough, one of which has been decommissioned. That list is not going to get added to without zoning hearing board approval, and I think at this point, we're almost built out as to where those towers could go. So that's a once and done list for now.
If we're up to Troy, there'd probably be sprinkler systems within those compounds.
Belt and suspenders.
Exactly.
So what would you recommend, Chris, that the motion should be?
Motion to recommend approval of the ordinance to council.
No, you gotta advertise, send it to the Berks County Planning Commission.
I know all that, but it's just. Just moving into details.
But.
Semantics.
Yeah,
Would it include addition?
well, I guess what we could do, yeah. Thank you. The motion could be to recommend to council that the ordinance be sent to the county planning commission for review and subsequent to that review, approval by council, conditioned on adding some language based on Troy's request.
So it'll be subject to and conditioned upon.
Yes.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Work that one. Good job.
Keep it moving.
Is there any new business?
Well, first, is there any old business?
Any old business? Any new business? Meeting's adjourned, thank you.
Thank you.
We're waiting for a motion. You're like, get out.
And I'd like to thank Mike from chairing 2 meetings for me while I was on jury duty in Philadelphia, which I just found out I'm excused tomorrow.
Congratulations.
Tomorrow, yeah.